It's good to have you here this morning. Saul is the man under consideration today, not Saul of Tarsus, who becomes the Apostle Paul. No. Saul the Benjamite, who will be the first king of Israel. He would be exactly what the people wanted, and God said, be careful when you ask for a king, because here's exactly what he will turn into. And so what we studied last week was Samuel telling the children of Israel, if you really want a king, this is what the king is going to be like. And he's going to take your best children, and he's going to take your male children, he's going to work them on his farm, not your farm. He's going to take your beautiful daughters, and they're going to grow up in his house, not your house. And he's going to take your servants, and your servants are going to serve his generals, not your family. And they said, in spite of all that, they said, no, but we want a king. We want a king anyway. So we don't need to look at this as God giving permission as much as it is God about to school them. He's about to school them. Okay, you want a king? You asked for it. Here you go. And they're going to find eventually themselves being in misery over that. So the man specifically that comes into focus is in chapter 9 and in verse 1. There was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechthorah, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. Now, the Benjamites were a small tribe, but they were mighty. They had a lot of strong soldiers until they raised themselves up against Israel. And so there's already been, we think about a civil war taking place between Judah and Israel that takes place after the death of Solomon, and that's true. That's where we see the kingdom divided. But it's not the first time we've had trouble in the family. The Benjamites raised themselves up against the rest of Israel, and the rest of Israel wiped them out. We studied that in the book of Judges. They wiped them out so bad that when it was all said and done, the other men from different tribes had to come in and be like surrogate Benjamites to raise children by Benjamite women just to restore the tribe. It was nearly all snuffed out. So the fact that there was this man who was this mighty man of valor, Kish, in Benjamin, and that he can give his bloodline, it means his family was one of the only remaining few that even survived that skirmish between Benjamin and the rest of them. And so here's this mighty man of power. And verse 2 says, he had a choice and handsome son whose name was Saul. And there was not a more handsome person than he among the children of Israel. And from his shoulders upwards he was taller than any of the people. Saul is the biblical epitome of tall, dark, and handsome. Okay? The Bible doesn't waste words. God doesn't waste words. So when God says that Bathsheba was beautiful to behold, you can take it just for that. That wasn't really David's opinion. That was the way it is. When the Bible says that there was nobody more handsome than Saul in Israel, well, Saul was their Mr. Universe contestant. He was the one. He was big. He was good looking. And he just looked like he ought to be the king. You know, oh wow, what a great guy to be the king, and this is it. And so we just have somebody who's going to meet, and this is very significant. We have somebody who's going to meet all of the physical expectations of the children of Israel. And why is that critical as opposed to the second king? When Samuel found the second king, who was that? David. And you just read about him last week. And what did it say about David's anointing when he was anointed? Was David a big, strong, strapping? Yeah, he was ruddy and good looking, right? Okay. But in stature, he wasn't even full-grown man yet. You know, he's still what we would believe to be in his early to mid-teenage years when he was actually first anointed king. But what is it that God tells Samuel on that occasion? Man looks at the what? But God looks at the heart. So I think that there's real significance here in chapter 9, verse 2, when it tells you just how handsome Saul was, because they were looking for this, they were looking with their eyes, and that's a key. Now, parents, we have to be real careful when raising our children, and it's really hard to do, because it won't be very long before your daughter is swept off her feet by the looks of a handsome young man. Or the same thing can happen to a young man. He can be completely distracted from everything in life by a beautiful young woman. And there's really nothing wrong with being handsome or being beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that inherently. But what has to happen is we have to have taught our children from an early age. Handsome and good looking, that's just the shell. That's just the wrapping on the present. Open that box. See what kind of character is inside. See if this is a man who's going to be taking you closer to God or farther away. See if this is a woman who is going to lovingly support and push you towards heaven, or one who's going to be constantly dragging you away from it. And we have examples of both. I've seen beautiful women and handsome men that were very godly, and I've seen beautiful women and handsome men that were so ungodly that after a while, you can't even see. You don't even have a picture of their physical beauty anymore. When you hear their name is always associated with evil, and it just doesn't matter how beautiful they are on the outside. You come to recognize that as evil. Oh, yeah. Delilah was a beautiful Philistine woman who caught Samson's eye. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. He pouted to his mama and daddy that he had to have her, and he got her, and she spent every day of her life dragging him away from God. Yeah, great point. Great point about Delilah. Good. Well, verse 3. Now, the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost, and Kish said to his son Saul, "Please take one of your servants with you and arise and go and look for the donkeys." And verse 3b says, but Saul was so handsome and good looking, he said, "No, Dad, that kind of work is below me. I won't be doing that." No, I'm kidding. That's not there. There is no 3b. What I want you to recognize about Saul is that Saul, at this point in his life, not only is handsome and good looking, tall, all of that, but at this point in his life, Saul's a good man. Saul is a good man. Okay? Now, there is something within him that's going to get very distracted, and his life is not going to end well at all. But here at this point, you should know that Saul is a good man, and God is going to contrast early Saul with late Saul later through the words of Samuel. But at this point, Dad says, well, we lost our donkeys. You need to go find my donkeys. And in verse 4, you don't see any complaint or questioning of that at all. It says, so he passed through the mountains of Ephraim and through the land of Shalisha, but they did not find them. Then they passed through the land of Shalem, and they were not there. But he passed through the land of the Benjamites, and they did not find them. So when they had come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant who was with him, "Come, let us return, lest my father cease worrying about the donkeys and become worried about us." So he's a good man. He's doing his father's work on the farm. They're looking for the donkeys. They can't find these donkeys anywhere. It's really funny how many places this is going to overlay with Brett's lesson, but like Brett said Sunday, they can't put them on Facebook. Missing donkeys, please return to Saul, son of Kish. It's just not going to be there. There's no Instagram, no nothing. And by the way, everybody else is so busy taking care of their own donkeys, they don't have time to help you. So if you've lost your donkey, you just got to go find your donkey. There's nothing is going to beat the labor of just getting out there and searching high and low. Yeah, so Saul's conscientious about that, isn't he? He says, we don't want Dad to worry about us. It's a big deal, yeah. We don't want Dad to worry about us, and we've been gone so long that I think we might be more of a concern than those old donkeys. So he said in verse 6, look now, there is in this city a man of God. He's an honorable man, that all that he says surely comes to pass. So let us go there. Perhaps he can show us the way that we should go. Then Saul said to his servant, but look, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread in our vessel is all gone, and there's no present to bring the man of God. What do we have? And the servant answered Saul again and said, look, I have here at hand 1/4 of a shekel of silver, and I will give that to the man of God to tell us our way. Now let's stop right there for just a moment. Again, look at the characteristics of young Saul. Obedient to his father immediately. Diligent. He didn't just give up after a few hours. He goes and he goes. He's gone for days. He's concerned about the feelings of others. He says, Dad's going to be more worried about us than he is the donkeys. The servant says, well, there's a man of God here in the town. Maybe he can tell us the way that we should go. And Saul says, well, that'd be great, but I can't go ask the man of God to do that. I don't have a gift for him. I don't have anything by which I could purchase the use of his godliness. You know, he knows things we don't know. So I don't know what to do about that. But the servant says, look, I've got a sliver of silver here, what he's amounting to. Now the servant, this is an honorable thing too, because this is his master's son, and it would be like saying, you know, well, we're out on the job and we've got to stay in a motel overnight, but I'm flat busted. I don't have anything. I guess we'll sleep in the truck. And the employee's saying, nope, I'll take care of the hotel bill tonight. You know, I'll do that. Well, he's not obligated to do that. In fact, we would say the other thing. We would say the owner should have taken care of that, but the owner didn't have the means and ability to right then. And so this servant, so also what I'm getting at is Saul and Kish have surrounded themselves with good people. See, I'm not finding any fault with Saul here. And I want us to all be on the same page, because it's really easy to get down on Saul later, and we need to start determining what was the tilt factor? Where did things go over the edge? So they do that. Saul agrees to that, and verse 9 is parenthetical. And what I mean by that, a lot of versions, one of two things will happen. Either you're going to see that this verse starts with parentheses and ends with parentheses, or it may not be in your version at all here. You might look down in your footnotes and see that it's going to tell you that may be left out. Why? Why is it parenthetical? Well, it just tells us something that we would know. We call these men prophets. But the parenthetical statement here is an explanation. It says, formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he spoke thus, come, let us go and see the seer, or let us go to the seer. For he who is now called a prophet was formerly called a seer. Okay, so in their day, they didn't call him a prophet. They didn't say there's a prophet of God. They said there's a seer. Why? Because he could see things. He could see into the future as to how God would have events be untold. So this man is called the seer. And then we pick up the story, verse 10. Saul said to his servants, well said, come and let us go. So they went to the city where the man of God was. And as they went up on the hill to the city, they met some young women going out to draw water, and said to them, is the seer here? And they answered and said, yes, he is here, just ahead of you. Hurry now, for today he came into this city, because there is a sacrifice of the people today on the high place. As soon as you come into the city, you will surely find him before he goes up to the high place. For the people will not eat until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterwards, those who are invited will eat. Now therefore go up, for about this time you will find him. All right. There's a little bit of the language of Ashdod in this. Did you catch that? The children of Israel adopted a term from the Canaanite people, and the Canaanite people always meant it to be the worship of idolatry. The Israelite people did not always mean idolatry. Unfortunately, sometimes they did. But the term I'm referring to is the term high place. We're going up to the high place. Well, to go up to the high place, if you were a Canaanite, that meant, well, that's where the idols are, so we're going to go bow down to our idols up on the high places. And that was what that meant. The Israelites took over the term, and instead of having idols up there, there were times when they just had big feasts up here like this. There was a sacrifice that was given to God. The seer was going to bless that sacrifice. That was the occasion for his being there. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there was any idolatry use going on. But as I said, however, there are times, especially after the days of Jeroboam and Rehoboam, the kings that succeeded Solomon, where unfortunately going up to the high places for the Israelites meant that they were falling back into the practices of idolatry that the Canaanites used. And so it's generally associated as a bad thing. This is one of the rare instances where it's not necessarily associated with a bad thing. They just went up there to have this feast, and they were looking for the blessing. Comments here, I thought. So the young women said, okay, you got to hurry. He's just ahead of you, and they're not going to start till he gets there, but if you want to get in on this, you really need to hurry up. So they kind of rush up there. Verse 14, they went up to the city, and as they were coming in, there was Samuel coming out towards him on his way to the high place. Now, the Lord had told Samuel in his ear the day before Saul came, saying, tomorrow about this time I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him commander over my people, Israel, that he may save my people from the hand of the Philistines, for I have looked upon my people because their cry has come to me. So Samuel, being the seer, was already aware that he was going to have an encounter with Saul. Saul, what is he looking for? His daddy's donkeys. I just want the animals. We want to go home. So he's about to have a very different expectation realized. Did Saul expect to be the king? Is Saul a great public speaker? Does he have any military background? Does he have any of the things that you would expect other than the good looks of being a king? And the answer is no. No, he doesn't. And he just wants to get the donkeys and go home. That's all his expectation is. Samuel, on the other hand, has been told of God that you're going to meet the one tomorrow, about this time tomorrow afternoon, that's going to be the commander over my people. So, verse 17, so when Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said to him, there he is, the man of whom I spoke to you. This one shall reign over my people. And Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate and said, please tell me, where is the seer's house? And Samuel answered Saul and said, I am the seer. Go up before me to the high place, for you shall eat with me today, and tomorrow I will let you go, and will tell you all that is in your heart. But as for your donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, do not be anxious for them, for they have been found, and on whom is all the desire of Israel. Is it not on you and on all of your father's house? I texted Craig earlier this week, Tuesday night after his first day on the new job in Arkansas, and I said, so how was your first day? And he said, man, it was fine, but it was like trying to get a drink out of a fire hydrant. You know, what did he mean by that? You ever tried to drink out of a garden hose that was blasting you? It gets you yeah, Dad, it gets you completely overwhelmed. And that's kind of where he was. That's kind of where Saul is right here. Oh, your daddy's donkeys are fine. Oh, good. Oh, everybody in Israel is looking at you. Huh? What? Everybody in Israel is looking at me. I can't go home? No, you can't go home today. and you can't go home tomorrow either, and you're going to be my honored guest. You think that this feast was here to honor me, you're going to be my honored guest here. You're going to eat with me here, and all of Israel is going to be looking on you. Well, these words would just be confusion, wouldn't they be, to you or to me? Just imagine. I can't even think of an equivalent. If you just think about Israel as an entire nation, that's probably like Bruce getting flagged down on the side of the road, and reluctantly you pull over and you don't know what's going on, and they say, Bruce, we're going to make you head of sales for Amazon. Well, now Bruce is a great salesman, but I don't think he had any expectation. What would you do with that information? You want to say yes immediately, but then you're thinking, why did they pick me? What is going on? So just think about that for Saul and what's taking place here. So we get his answer, verse 21. Saul answered and said, "Am I not a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all of the families of the tribes of Benjamin? Why then do you speak to me like this?" I really, really like this answer, because there is tremendous humility in what he is saying. It is true that Benjamin was the smallest tribe in Israel, and at this point, because it's only been a generation since Israel just whipped up on Benjamin and put them in their place, that if you're from Benjamin, you don't raise your head for much. You keep your head down, because we still have our eye on you. We want to watch out. So he's right and good to talk about Benjamin as being the least. But in Benjamin, he goes on with his humility and say, my father's house is the least. That kind of humility, let's face it, Kish is stated as being a mighty man of valor. No, Kish is not the smallest or least known in Benjamin. So I appreciate Saul taking that humility, because he didn't have to, right? He didn't have to do that. So we can sometimes call this false humility, and I get it. You know and I know when someone has put on so much false humility that you're, oh, stop. Just, we all know who you are, Stop having such false humility. But still, to have a low estimation of yourself is a very good thing. And I've told you that before. It's dangerous to be a preacher, because everybody comes up and tells you, oh, what a great lesson, or you did great, or I know you mean well, but sometimes that can be as harmful as anything, because if a preacher starts believing that about himself, then he can get himself lifted up. So it is with Saul. So I value, and I think that we should make note that he considers himself to be little among the people. And I chose those words very carefully. So he then just asked, why are you talking to me like this? Verse 22, Samuel took Saul and his servant and brought them into the hall. He had them set at the place of honor among those who were invited, and there was about 30 persons. And Samuel said to the cook, bring the portion which I gave you, of which I said to you, set it apart. So the cook took up the thigh with its upper part that was set before Saul. And Samuel said, here it is, what was kept back. It was set apart for you. Eat, for until this time it has been kept for you, since I had invited the people. So Saul ate with Samuel that day. See, Samuel didn't reveal to the people what the occasion of the feast was. But the people knew there was going to be a big feast set up on the hill, and the people also knew that it wasn't going to start until Samuel got there. So the people kind of have it in their mind that this is in honor of Samuel. But what we now learn was that back at the time when God said, about this time tomorrow, I'm going to show you the man who's going to be commander over my people, Samuel went ahead and said, well, if tomorrow afternoon I'm going to find this out, then tomorrow night we're going to have a big feast in his honor. And he didn't tell anybody that. He just set that up. And oh, how beautiful that is, really, if you think about it. I have no idea what Saul was wearing, but he's a farmer who's been on the road looking for donkeys for a date. So you can imagine how he would come in and how he would seem in his own eyes. And yet there's 30 people here. Is this his hometown? It's not his hometown, so he doesn't know anybody. And all of these people are looking at him sitting at the place of honor. Man, would you be squirming in your seat a little bit? You know, why is this happening to me? Why am I being lifted up like this? I don't understand. And then, when it comes time to eat, this big feast is prepared, and then the one who we thought was the great one, Samuel, says to the chef, "Oh, you know that choice piece of meat that I told you yesterday to set apart? Yeah? Go ahead and bring it out. That's for Saul." Well, what was Saul doing yesterday afternoon? Yesterday afternoon, while he is working on finding his daddy's sheep, the things that he thought were mundane, God already had a plan for him. Not only did God already have a plan for him, but Samuel had already set that plan in motion. So you listen up, people. There's something for you here. There's something for every one of you here. At just about the time when you want to give up on the job you've got right in front of you, just about the time when you don't want to go on anymore and you don't know whether it's worth it and you're just tired and want to quit, God may have already set something in order in your life that you could never anticipate. Happened to Saul, right? It happened to anybody else? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Think of Peter. Peter didn't know a lot of things, but he knew how to fish. And he knew the Lake of Galilee real well. And so when he had fished all night and caught nothing, you're looking at an expert coming in who had applied his trade with expert precision and had failed. And he just wants to clean the nets and go home. We'll get some fish on a different day. But there stands Jesus on the shore, who has already set Peter aside. Think about that. While Peter's out there catching no fish and getting discouraged about it, Jesus has already set Peter aside. Cast your nets on the other side. I don't want to cast my nets on the other side. I'm tired of going. I want to go home. There's nothing there. Lord, we fished all night, is what he says politely. But, at your command, we'll be happy to prove you wrong. Now, don't you know that that's kind of what Peter's thought process was? I'm the expert. I'm sure you're a good carpenter. I've heard a lot about you, followed you a little bit, but I'm the fisherman here, but at your command, I'll go ahead and do that and prove you wrong. So they cast their nets on the other side. Do they prove Jesus wrong? No. Peter is overwhelmed by the catch to the extent to where at that time he looks upon himself with low esteem. And what he says to the Lord when he gets to the shore is, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Jesus says, "No, I'm going to make you a fisher of men." Okay? So, I'm just asking you to hang in there. Whatever your lot in life is right now, whatever you're battling that others don't know, or maybe you're just stuck in just the mundane, trivial things that cause you to be tired in life. God may already be preparing a feast for you that you have no idea what he has set in store. So the important thing there is for us to press on, keep our eyes open for those blessings which would come from the Lord. Yeah. I gave 2 of hundreds of biblical examples, and then if we look back in our lives, we do find kind of the same thing, that we're thinking life is going one way, and it turns on a dime. And how we're able to respond to that has everything to do with how have we been diligent. Jesus said it, "Be faithful in the little thing, and I'll make you Lord over many things." So just don't give up in doing the little things right. Just keep doing that. Just keep doing the next right thing. And because you don't know what's happening outside of your current circle that is going to be in the middle of your circle one day. Soon. Tomorrow, maybe. So, good points. Thank you. All right. So, verse 25, when they had come down from the high place into the city, Samuel spoke with Saul on the top of the house. And they arose early, and there it was about the dawning of the day that Samuel called to Saul on the top of the house, saying, "Get up, that I might send you on your way." And Saul arose, and both of them went out by his side, he and Samuel. That's interesting because you've got 2 or 3 ancient texts that interpret those verses a little bit differently. One of them says that Samuel went up and talked with Saul on the roof of the house, and we've already discussed how that's not uncommon. The roofs were flat. They were made to be like a patio area, so it's not like we're crawling up on our shingled roofs today. It's not a weird thing. So some of the ancient texts say that he went up there and they talked together up there. Others just said that Saul went up there and went to sleep. And so we're not really sure why some of those old ancient texts don't exactly align with each other. But by the time you get to the next verse where Samuel is calling for Saul to come down, we're going to go talk, everything is back in order there. So there's really no tremendous confusion. We do know that Samuel went up on that roof. That's where that Saul did, excuse me. And that's where they slept. So at the end of verse 26, it's just these 2 men. It's just Samuel and Saul. And as they were going down to the outskirts of the city, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the servant to go on ahead of us." And he went on. "But you stand here a while, that I may announce to you the word of God." I would imagine, and this was even true in the United States early on, that the son of the household had to work right alongside the servants of the household. In fact, Jesus says there's no difference between the son and the servant when they're growing up. They both have to work alike, and it's only later that the son gets the inheritance and the servant doesn't. And Saul has had such a humble view of himself that Samuel is saying, "Now Saul, you tell your servant, go on ahead. I just want to talk to you alone." I would imagine that servant was a little bit of a security blanket for Saul. It'd kind of be hard because you're going to be alone with the seer. Now, something big is about to be said. You're how's that for East Texas? "Thou shalt surely soon receive news." Fixing to get some news. Saul is about to receive some news from Samuel. That's important. It's important enough that we're going to have this conversation alone, just the 2 of us. This isn't for the ears of this servant yet. And that's another thing that I just want to bring up. There's a lot of news that comes, and it'll come into our ears. And timing is everything as to how we disperse that news. And sometimes it's really hard to sit on news, isn't it? You know something that nobody else knows. But for the propriety's sake, the timing it's not a good time for everybody to know. And that's just the way life is. You and I need to have some discretion there. This servant will soon enough know that Saul is going to be king. But as for now, that just needs to be Samuel and Saul. And don't be afraid of that. Don't feel like that, because here's the thing. In a case like that, you're not keeping secret. Okay? Sometimes we feel like, I'm keeping a secret. You're not keeping a secret. There's just timing that is involved. The thing that may be secret today may be known tomorrow, but for today, just the few need to know, and that's all right. So he goes on before, and that gets us into chapter 10. What time is it, by the way? 5 after. We got 10 minutes. Great, thank you. So we're just going to start into chapter 10, and we get this announcement from Samuel to Saul as to how this is going to be. Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on his head And he kissed him, and he said, is it not because the Lord has anointed you commander over his inheritance? When you have departed from me today, you will find 2 men by Rachel's tomb in the territory of Benjamin at Zelzah. And they will say to you, the donkeys which you look for have been found, and now your father has ceased caring about the donkeys and is worrying about you, saying, what shall I do about my son? Then you shall go forward from there, and shall come on to the terebinth tree of Tabor, and 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you, one carrying 3 young goats, another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying skins of wine. And they will greet you, and they will give you 2 loaves of bread, which you will receive from their hands. And after that you shall come to the hill of God, where the Philistine garrison is, and it will happen when you have come there to the city, that you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place with stringed instruments and tambourines, a flute and a harp before them, and they will be prophesying. Then the Spirit of the Lord will come up to you, and will prophesy with them, and be turned into another man. And it will be that when these signs come to you, that you do as the occasion demands, for God is with you. Wow. What a thought to think about the seer's exactness. The first people you're going to meet are 2 men. Okay? The 2 men are going to tell you, the donkeys have been found, your dad is worried for you, just kind of like you thought. All right. Well, that's not very prophetic. I mean, just by itself, that's a good, maybe we can have a good guess. You know, as he gets closer to home, the fact that 2 men might come and tell him, oh yeah, we found your dad's donkeys and dad's worried about you, that's not much of a prophecy. But then you're going to be met by 3 men. And one of those men is going to be carrying 3 goats. How do you carry 3 goats? See, I don't think that's not normal. What he's about to see, 1 goat, 2 goat, maybe the 3rd one over the neck, but my point is, all of a sudden, the prophet is painting a picture that's starting to be distinct. You wouldn't normally see a man carrying 3 goats. And you'll also see another man with him. He's got 3 loaves of bread. And you're going to see another man with him. And what he's carrying is not defined by numbers. We don't know how many numbers of what he's carrying. But these men are going to meet you. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to see them at the terebinth tree of Tabor. That's a very specific place. How does Samuel know that? If any of this comes true, you're going to know he's a seer, right? Because this is just too specific for this to be all working out, and the skins of wine. And they're going to greet you. They're going to give you 2 loaves. Go ahead and take those 2 loaves, which you will take. Okay. And so then you're going to be coming to the hill of God where the Philistine garrison is, and this host of prophets is going to come down the hill playing on these instruments and prophesying to God, and they're going to come upon you, verse 5, and in verse 6, then the Spirit of God will come upon you, and you will prophesy with them and be turned into another man. What? If you're Saul, do you start backing up at this point a little bit? I'm not sure. You'll be turned into another man. Well, what would be different about Saul? There'd be a phrase that the Israelites would use for years also to come. He'd be brave, okay, that's very true, because he definitely did some things that he could only do by the Spirit of God. If God wasn't with him, he wouldn't have done them. But there's a specific phrase that comes out of this, that when you see somebody acting like you're not used to them acting, if you're an Israelite, here's the phrase you would say. You'd say, Is Saul also among the prophets? That's going to be a phrase in Israel. Is Saul also among the prophets? And that phrase means you're not acting like yourself. You're one kind of man, and now you're a different kind of man. And so you're going to catch that. I'm just kind of pre-shadowing that in the several chapters that are ahead of us, eventually you're going to see that just becomes a phrase, like we would say, can a leopard change its spots? That's also a biblical phrase, but we've known that. Is Saul also among the prophets? In other words, what happened to you? So, and not necessarily in a bad way. And so the Spirit of God comes upon him. Now, we saw the Spirit of God in the days of Joshua clearly. I mean, the Bible was just clear about the Spirit of God then. We saw the Spirit of God in the days of the judges, that occasionally you would see that phrase, the Spirit of God. Here, the Spirit of God is going to come upon Saul. We should not be shocked at the manifestation of the Spirit of God in the Old Testament. But it is shocking to people sometimes. You'll recall that that Saul and Aquila and Priscilla, when they meet up with Apollos and 12 other men that were with Apollos, they weren't even aware if there was a Holy Spirit. See, that was like new news to them. But we have the manifestation of the Spirit of God, and we can take this to be the Holy Spirit. It's not God the Father, of whom nobody could stand in his presence. It's not the angel of the Lord, who oftentimes comes, which may very well be a manifestation of Jesus in the flesh prior to his coming. But yet it is God with them. And so the only alternative we have, if it's not God the Father and if it's not God the Son, we can identify the Spirit of God here as the Holy Spirit. The other thing is that the language doesn't allow us to say, well, he had the attitude of God upon him. In other words, it's not little s spirit that, he had the attitude of God's man. That's not it. Here is very clearly the indication of a being. The Spirit of God here is an actual being that has come upon Saul. And when the Spirit of God comes upon you, it does change you. It'll cause Saul to do things here in the way of prophecy that he did not expect. It would cause Peter and the 11 to speak in tongues that they had not known on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. So, comments or thoughts or questions here? All right, so the seer Samuel tells him all of those things that are going to be, and so the final kind of word on that is, he says, verse 7, that when these signs come to you, that you do as the occasion demands, for God is with you. You shall go down before me to Gilgal, and surely I will come down to you to offer burnt offerings and make sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days you shall wait till I come to you and show you what you should do. All right, we're going to end on this note. We're out of time, but what I want you to end with is that there is a precedence here that is set. Saul is king of the people. Now, they don't know that yet, but Saul is king of the people. Saul is not king of God. Samuel takes a leadership role over Saul. Samuel is the representation of God here, and so Samuel works distinct and apart from Saul. When occasion allows, then Samuel will give him the homage due to a king, but at no point does being king make you above God's law, and Samuel is set in order there to make sure that that is the case. And we'll maybe have some reason to bring that up a little bit later on.